when the Canadian truckers protest during COVID kicked off, and bank accounts are getting frozen, jobs being lost. I saw that the only money those people was getting was Bitcoin. It wasn't Ethereum, it wasn't Litecoin, it wasn't Doge. The only people that were sending those people money was Bitcoiners. And that was when I realized, I'm like, okay, well, this isn't a game. Like, we're now actively using Bitcoin to circumvent a nation state doing top-down banking controls on their people.
Hello, welcome to Unlocking Commerce and Business. I'm Connie Davis, your guide through the emotional and technological waves of entrepreneurship. We're a lighthouse. We're here to illuminate amazing stories and people that are doing extraordinary things to navigate the changing tides of money movement and flow with commerce, especially as it evolves into the world of blockchain and Web3. In today's episode, Commerce the Bitcoin Way, we're joined by Wesley Schlemmer, president of the Bitcoin Bay Foundation, to explore the essence of commerce, the value exchange, the belief in money, and Bitcoin's role in empowering Tampa's entrepreneurs. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow our show. So we're going to dive in. Hi, Wesley.
Hey, Connie, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. The Bitcoin Bay Foundation is making Tampa this hub for crypto adoption. It's been amazing. The recent Bitcoin Day was so amazing to be at. It was probably one of the most patriotic moments I've been in a while, which was really refreshing. But first, tell us a little bit about you and your Bitcoin story.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised Floridian. I lived in Tampa most of my life. I went to school up in Boston for a few years, moved home during COVID, and that was kind of when the Bitcoin journey really kicked off. I had just been kind of investing and trading and stuff like that for a couple of years, but then when the Canadian truckers protest during COVID kicked off, and bank accounts are getting frozen, jobs being lost. I saw that the only money those people was getting was Bitcoin. It wasn't Ethereum, it wasn't Litecoin, it wasn't Doge. The only people that were sending those people money was Bitcoiners. And that was when I realized, I'm like, okay, well, this isn't a game. Like, we're now actively using Bitcoin to circumvent a nation state doing top-down banking controls on their people. So that was when I kind of went Bitcoin only. I took all of my coins, I dumped them all into Bitcoin, and then when I moved home, I was waiting for the severe winter of death that we were all promised during COVID to happen. So I was just kind of watching and waiting, and during that time, I started getting into Bitcoin mining, and then ended up pretty much YOLOing all of the money that I had made over the past couple of years and into Bitcoin mining at the top of the market, and just rode that the whole way down. So it wasn't exactly the get-rich-quick scheme I was hoping it was, but that's how I got involved with local Meetup, became best friends with the people running it. 3 years later, or a year and a half later, we became the first Bitcoin Meetup to corporate as a nonprofit. Standing on the shoulders of the Tampa Bay Bitcoin Meetup, which is the longest-running active Bitcoin Meetup in the country, if not the world. Some people are arguing about that. I hear there's some Germans out there that might have a little bit longer, but at least the U.S. And in 2023, we incorporated as a nonprofit to, provide a structure for everything that we were building, focusing on local education and Bitcoin adoption in the Tampa Bay area.
Yeah, and I still remember the time that we kind of started. I think I showed up at the first Bitcoin Bay event and I was like, what is going on? This was so different and refreshing. So thank you for diving in, because I think it's really intimidating at first for a lot of people, but it kind of brings us to the heart of commerce, because Bitcoin was meant to be this person to person, system to help people move money without people in between. So in your words, how do you define commerce through the lens of Bitcoin? And if you think about it from how do we help young entrepreneurs and mature small business owners integrate or even think about stepping forward to integrate it into their business as they hear about it out in the news or in their community?
Yeah, I think, when you're talking commerce, a good way to help people, if at least not understand it, but to accept it, is to be like, look, we are an increasingly digital and online society. Business is increasingly done online. People barely go to you don't have to leave your house, and you can get groceries, you can get your you can get your Amazon, you can get whatever. And so we're becoming a digitally native people, for better or worse, and Bitcoin is digitally native money. So it's just a natural thing that happens. You don't have to go to your bank to get cash out to pay somebody. You can just pay them directly using Bitcoin. So that's how I typically try to frame it. Is this, we are very digital, and this is digitally native money, and they just go hand in hand.
And that's probably the digital native piece is you can't ignore that with the young
Hmm.
bankers and the youth that are doing everything on their phone. They're learning how to even, pay for things without even touching cash anymore. They don't even know that, cash is really behind the card. I recently taught ninth graders and I asked them, what is money to you? And they're like, it's my mom's debit card. So, they really thought that the debit card was where the money comes from. So there's a real
Right.
opportunity to truly educate backwards into the history of money and how we got to, the Bitcoin story that it is. And, my entire career was spent kind of really proving that money's emotional, and then
Hmm.
digital money and digital experiences are so personal. And that gets to the heart of the emotional why that people open a business for, right? They're making business decisions, consumer decisions. And for many entrepreneurs, though, adopting Bitcoin, it feels pretty stormy. It feels like, what do I have to learn? And I'm already out here in this big ocean of the business world, dealing with all of the things that affect me as a business owner. How does Bitcoin Bay Foundation help small business owners overcome some of those emotional seas and the
Hmm.
storms, and then embracing Bitcoin as they learn to become that store of value?
Yeah, so we really just try to keep it as simple as possible. Um, I mean, anyone who's been in this industry knows it can get very complicated very quickly. And I'll try to explain that to people. Like, I'm like, look, it's like you're driving, you're learning how to drive. You know, as a business owner looking to try and adopt Bitcoin, you're learning how to drive. And you can either learn how to drive on a stick shift, or you can drive on a push to start automatic. They're both vehicles, they'll both get you there. One is more complicated than the other. You can go the stick shift route, and then you can learn how to repair your own car, and then you can learn how to change your oil, repair the car, like take things apart, upgrades. You can do all of that, or you can just stay in your automatic push to start forever. It, it works. You have to offload some of the maintenance to people, because that's you chose the simple path, but that's fine. Like, you don't have to get started and stay there. Um, so that's kind of how I try to explain it to people. And we really we work with them closely. And honestly, most of the businesses that we have in the area came to our meetup because they were Bitcoiners, and so they want the manual. That's what they're in it for. They want control of their finances. Um, but for some, they just want to be able to take their cash flow, put it into Bitcoin, and not worry about it. So we set them up on River, have the auto DCA set, and a year goes by and they tell us how happy they are. So it's definitely a spectrum, because as you know, everyone is different.
So you used an acronym, and the acronym DCA. Can you tell us what that is, just for everybody
Yeah.
that's still learning?
Yep. So dollar cost averaging. And so I'm usually better about that. But so dollar cost averaging is when you have the life of your uh, choices you're making. So you have 2 years. Let's say you're investing in something. You can either buy all of it at once, buy the dip, or you can just buy $10 a day, $10 a week, whatever, and that way you're riding the highs and the lows, and so the volatility of whatever it is you're doing doesn't really matter as much. You make sure you're not missing the lows, you're not staying on the sidelines even at the highs. And so it's the most powerful saving strategy you can do, is set up an auto reoccurring Bitcoin purchase at whatever amount you're able to afford.
Yeah, and I kind of think about that as, we don't really experience volatility in our day-to-day money movement. Everything's on the unit of a dollar. We're used
Hmm.
to that, stability, but we also are super sensitive to what's happening as we save for retirement, and, thinking about the inflation and the costs and what our purchase power looks like, right?
Hmm.
So as we think about this traditional belief system around money, shifting from a word like fiat, maybe you can tell us a little bit about how, fiat really stands up against Bitcoin and, the beliefs and money systems, and how do you see that evolving and what have you seen so far?
Yeah, and I think if anyone wants a real world, example of, volatility in the dollar, like look at the gas stations day to day. I'll see 30 cent swings up and down over a month. Um,
Right.
so it's starting to show, if you know where to look. Um, but I'm sorry, could you repeat the rest of your
Yeah, so
question?
just
There
thinking
was.
about like just looking at like the belief systems, right? The belief systems of what money is. How do you,
Mhm,
I was talking with someone last night, a young, well, she wasn't actually that young, but she was like, I look at it and go, how do I trust what's in my hand and what I
mm,
buy for a
mhm,
dollar versus what Bitcoin is? So she was really trying to understand, but she's trying to make that connection with trust
mhm. Right.
and believing
Yeah.
in what the money is.
Yep. And yeah. So when we're talking about fiat money, it's all trust. The entire backing of it is trust. Fiat means by decree. So the government says this is the money. We're using this, and so we all trust the government to not print money, to not devalue that. That trust is ill-founded and destroyed, in my opinion. We've lost 40% of our purchasing power since 2020. Like 85% since 1971, which is well within living memory for a lot of people. Um, so there is no trust. Like I know people have a normalcy bias for it, but you can't say you trust the dollar. I mean, if I have a student that fails, that has a 60% grade, am I going to trust them to run the class? Um, so what Bitcoin did was create a trustless system digitally. And what that means is whenever, let's say that I Venmo you $100. Venmo has to check with my bank to make sure I have those $100 to send to you. What can happen though is I can send out $300, three $100 payments if I only had $100 because those checks are slow. Like, oh, okay, Venmo checked it, yeah, go ahead, and then Zelle saws it or sees it and goes ahead, and then the check, obviously it'll come back and bounce eventually onto me. But if it's a burner account that some people have, I can just send out, I can double spend my money, which is what um, the danger of digital money always was because you had to have these trusted custodians manage your ledger to say you have this money to spend. Banks had to act as that third party digitally until Bitcoin. Now everybody validates that. And so you don't have to trust another institution or anybody really to know that if I send you Bitcoin and that transaction confirms in your wallet on chain, you have the money. I had it to send you, and it's now in your hand. There's no waiting to make sure. Oh, I wonder if the wire is going to clear, or if like those check fraud scams where you cash a check for $3,000 to pay the person 1,500, and then 2 weeks later the check's out of your account because it's a fraudulent check. Um, that's exactly the problem that Bitcoin solves. So it does take a change in mindset, or at least thinking, because it is a kind of counterintuitive. Um, but that's one of the big breakthroughs that Bitcoin had. It's the technical term is the Byzantine general problem. Like, how do you have honest communication amongst parties that aren't directly communicating with each other and don't necessarily have the same incentives aligned? And that's what Bitcoin enforces.
Yeah, and I think you're talking too about some of we've just come to know it as just part of the process, right? There's part of the process to move money, to run into friction, to run into delays, to have permission granted so that we can move things around. And, as I did a lot of work with, business owners, really just trying to, manage maybe it's just between multiple accounts. The treasury is, kind of spread across different financial institutions already for various, insurance reasons and limits and things like that. Um, and also for permissions, right? And or different policies and risk tolerances. So we're kind of already managing it. It's just that we're running into this is new vocabulary. This is a new system. The systems look a little differently. The screens look different. But it's still something to educate yourself on because of the inflation and just the belief, oh, the belief that Bitcoin's, really changing it. You're getting some feedback.
Sorry.
Yep, there you go. That's all right. So I do see, some of the parallels to what you're drawing to some of the conversations that I've had where people are trying to just make an educated and informed guess. And it may not be okay for them right now, but to be informed and empowered to make that decision and that
Hmm.
choice is, I think, really what is why I'm kind of in the space trying to help streamline or simplify too and tell the story a little bit differently too so that people can feel empowered about making a decision. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Do you
that's
have
exactly
any?
the.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, that's exactly the role that we try to fill is as an in-person place that
Hmm.
you can go and get this information. That
Right.
you can talk to somebody face to face and ask them these questions. You don't have to worry about getting hacked or scammed or
Yeah.
whatever because it's a mess out there.
That was what I was describing, like just walking in and going, I'm going to a Bitcoin meetup. Like that is, there's people out there that are willing to help teach me and I can build relationships and trust with, which is a huge part of business anyway, right? We build trust with people before we buy from them. So
Hmm.
I think it's a great service that you guys are doing to, just be there to help educate. You don't know all the answers to the questions and you get a whole wide gamut of people, but
Hmm.
it's great to have that in-person presence. Absolutely. So we had some fun times earlier this year in the Bitcoin float at
Hmm.
Gasparilla here in Tampa Bay, which I thought was a really vibrant way of really kind of showing off the power of the movement that Bitcoin has turned out to be. How do you continue to, I mean, what are you guys going to do to top that event? Is one, and then how do you continue to empower small businesses for, you know, what they want to do with their goals as they learn more about Bitcoin?
Yeah, so it is getting a little difficult to keep the bar high, um, on
You
the
guys,
events that we throw. I have a bad habit of saying we're going to do something and then I realize actually what it means and having to execute on it. But we are aiming for another float this year. That we were the world's first Bitcoin Pirate Parade float. Um, and now we also have Bitcoin Day, and the soiree we just had 2 months ago to outdo this coming year. So we actually just had a board meeting last night, so we do have stuff in the works. Um, but the next big thing we're doing is a Bitcoin for Business workshop. So
mm,
we'll be inviting any local business owner that wants to come. We were talking, we've all been talking to the Chamber of Commerce in the area, and getting them all in a room together and being like, look, all right, these are how you account for Bitcoin, how you store Bitcoin, and how you can buy and sell it. That's and everyone's that's the three main things that business owners always give me, other than well, who's gonna actually spend it. That's where we come in as Bitcoin Bay with our meetups. Um, but we'll be doing that December 6th to try to get the next wave of Bitcoin adoption moving in Tampa.
that's exciting because I think that that's really where, I think there's an appetite for that information. It's really naturally landing with those that have significant capital. They're trying to figure out what do I do to hedge against inflation, protect my assets, all of that good stuff. And, the conversation really is around as a business owner, how do I really, bridge to what's next? And in episode 2, I was talking with Brian Otten, and we had a great conversation around APIs and democratizing data, which is really important too. For business owners that are kind of learning to this on ramp, um, you're going to do the business workshop. What's next after that? Like, do they typically come back in? Do you guys offer consulting services? What does that look like for them to really work with you one on one, Wesley?
Yeah, so we have our weekly in-person meetups that everyone's welcome to. So, the hope is that these business owners, become part of the community, not just, people who take Bitcoin in the area.
Right.
But we do then, when if they want to, have us help them do it, we do offer to go in person, sit down with them, be like, all right, do you want the stick shift or do you want the automatic? Which way do you want to go with this? And then we try to tailor the services that we have relationships with, to their needs.
What's one of your favorite stories of someone that's come into the community and really embraced it?
Hmm. Um, there's a there's a guy that goes by the name of Gen Z for BTC. He just turned 16, so he's been here for 3 or 4 years now. Him and his mom came maybe to that business workshop for the first time. I don't remember what their first meetup was, but they had, she's a single mom, hairstylist, great woman, and found Bitcoin and realized like this is my way out of the rat race. Like don't have that much, but I'm gonna stack and stack and stack and just consistently DCA, and then getting her son to understand. Which I tell him all the time. I feel bad for him. Like, dude, you know stuff. You knew stuff at 14. I didn't know until I was 24. Um,
Right.
yeah, because it's a mess, Like, and people do deserve to have childhoods, but I guess the internet kind of did away with that. Um, anyways, it's been 3 years of getting to know them, relentlessly stacking, and he's like, I'm starting a business to buy more Bitcoin. People are loving them at conferences, and he's on podcasts, and so it's been great to get to know him and his mom like as they've grown in this space, and now he's in high school and driving, so he's bringing himself to the meetups. So it's been that's been one of probably my favorite parts of it. I think just getting to know, especially like the youth, like the college students that we have relationships with. It's really something to get to grow with them, in their journey, and then it kind of makes me feel old when they start graduating.
Yeah, and you're following on that. It's definitely a different way to spend our allowance these days. And and the kids learning about assets, though, I think is so important because that store of value is they're practicing skills, and they're learning how to trade those skills in their community as they go out and get their first job or practice on their leadership skills. But that mentality of I'm an asset and Bitcoin can be an asset, helps me secure that for my future. And that's a really empowering experience to go through. So I do think that lightens the load of adulthood as well, because it's already hard enough to become an adult and take on all of these liabilities and obligations. That feels really heavy. So if there's
Mhm.
something that we can hedge against to protect the asset that we believe ourselves to be, that's really where I think the emotion of empowerment and hope, and I can escape the rat race, or I don't have to carry all that heavy stuff, because these kids have it pretty rough right now. There's a lot of chaos out there. So I think
Yeah,
that's a great story.
yeah, and they and they see it too. Like they see the chaos, and they're like, what am I supposed to do here? So it's good
They're
to it's
inheriting the systems that we leave them.
yeah, and they don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah, I think that's a good call to action and an opportunity for all of us that are thought leaders in the community, really to think about, you know, what are we leaving behind? What are we leaving for the generation to come? And a lot of us live in the now, and we're headed for this quarter's earnings calls and performance based metrics and KPIs. But we got to think about the implications of the systems that we leave behind, and the traces of just uncertainty that flow from one generation to the other. I think that's really important. um, as we think about that resistance, because you mentioned that, you said they don't want any part of it, right? That resistance to changes. Are you seeing that in pretty universal, or is that standing out in certain age groups, certain demographics? What's the take on the meetup community, and who's embracing it faster than others?
Yeah, so like our meetups are pretty much always 24 to 54, um, and they're the ones who are in it already and are like, I want out, or I'm gonna make sure my kids don't have to be in this. When I go and work with the college students, they're obviously college student aged, but it's a full room. They get 50 people at their meetups, and what I'm what I'm seeing is about 40% are checked out, 20% are just the kind of the living, screw it, it's all messed up anyways, there's nothing I'm gonna be able to do, just live in the now. And then 20% are like, I am having my future actively stolen from me, and if I don't fight back, I will lose. And so
Wow.
those are obviously the ones that we have the close relationships with, internships and helping them get jobs, and that they're doing well in now. Um, so that's kind of the spread, of what I see at school. Uh, they all know something's wrong, the old ways aren't working, and either they are just gonna go down with the ship and just have a party, just don't care, don't know what they're gonna do, or they're like, I'm going to, like, they're like, we need to set sail, for a new world. And they're not the ones that are have their head up are really angry.
Yeah, it's actually really concerning. If you think about, we're all busy running our own businesses, but to the city leaders, the community leaders, the, government agencies that are really making decisions in policy, what do you see? Like, how is Bitcoin Bay helping in some of those areas, as far as what does the future look like? How do we do this change of guard, right? From the folks that are in politics and in the community today, to help usher in some of this new knowledge base that's going to be needed.
Yeah, I mean that's why we spend most of our time with the people, like the youngest students that we can, because the earlier you get these freedom oriented and self sovereign ideas like inculcated in them, the better off they'll be. So that's why we're so focused on education and community building. It's a lot harder to feel alone when there's a place you can go every week to meet with people that think like you and want and share a vision of the future, or at least share an understanding of the problems. So you're always starting from the same space. Some people might be over here, over here, over here, but you're all working from a shared foundation. It's something that like the church used to provide for a lot of people, or the town square. Like this was a place to go where people near you, like you, meet and think and talk and interact. And so, I definitely think there is I know there is a loneliness problem in the world. I mean, just check out social media these days. It's looking pretty dark on there. Um, and so kids are just not meeting each other. Adults, people aren't meeting with each other, aren't talking to each other. Um, and so that's kind of the most valuable thing I think that, at least for me, that we have at Bitcoin Bay, is this community of people all over the Tampa area, um, working towards a shared vision of a prosperous, resilient community on a sound money standard.
Yeah, and resiliency is what we're dealing with already. So it's having community to support, especially in the area of money, which is already so emotional. And we're seeing some signs coming out with the recent administration and some of the signs that digital money and liquid gold really has become Bitcoin. So and
Hmm.
people are really starting to think about what does that mean for me in my retirement planning or where I am in my life stage. So do you see a kind of convergence of the tides where maybe the bankers and the financial institutions can come together with the Bitcoin community and really embrace, like, how do we educate people and help them really feel hope about the systems?
Yeah, I definitely see a tide shift in that regard. I mean, the Bitcoin ETFs became the most successful ETF launch in history. They hit $70 billion in like 2 months or something like
Right.
crazy.
Pretty fast.
So yeah, so the financial institutions are at least buying Bitcoin. I don't, there's definitely been an adversarial relationship for pretty good reason. It was invented directly in response to bankers' malfeasance and as a tool that would be unable to be manipulated in the way that they manipulated our financial system in 2008. I think because when '08 was all said and done, we were in the trillions of dollars worth of bailouts, which was still a lot of money back
We
then.
were. It was
Um,
significant. Yeah.
yeah, that was like we've had 80% of all dollars in existence since '08. So I don't know um, if they're capable of adopting Bitcoin the way it was meant to be. They 100% are capable of integrating Bitcoin into their own system and may, they may not because they have their system that they control, that they extract fees from. And if they were to use Bitcoin, there wouldn't be a need for wire fees or the ACH or for the automated clearinghouse. It obviates a
Yeah,
lot of
I
the
think
needs.
it can. And it means, I think that there's an opportunity. And we talked about this, Lonnie and I, on the first podcast episode about conscious capitalism, right? And just being more aware and conscious that can we create regenerative models to where it's really about value exchange and bringing us back to a true exchange of value to where it's not so extraction based. So that's the Conscious Capitalism Alliance in St. Petersburg. Really beautiful mission, fueled by two amazing women that really want to have conversations with business owners and innovative thinking, to where how do we bring community together, build alliances that can really see and set the stage for the future, so that we have a more equitable you know runway to all thriving and all doing good as community members. So, and that's really where I get inspired by, the leaders like yourself and, the Conscious Capitalism Alliance and, myself, where it's like we've got to have some of these tough conversations to be more inclusive and aware of how people are feeling about the systems that they're trying to build businesses in. Because at the end of the day, it's how do we feed our families? How do we, experience life and have the pleasant life that we're meant to have. And if money is what's getting in the way, we got to address that, and we can address that as a community.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
mean,
any
there's
closing
tons.
thoughts? Oh, I think
Yeah, I
we
mean,
got
I
a
think
little bit of a delay.
sorry. Yeah, that's the beauty of Zoom calls, or of fa I like how it zooms like the Uber of of video calls, I guess. You'd think we'd have this figured out after doing this for 5 years, but yeah, I mean, like there are, we could go on for another 2 hours just listing the problems that we face as a country, and they all have their own solutions, their own symptoms, their own causes. But whenever you have the foundational transactional layer of society being ridden with moth holes, it doesn't make any like it makes everything more difficult. There's a homeless problem in downtown Austin. Anyone who's been there knows it's bad. Well, if housing and costs didn't go through the roof while purchasing power of the dollar didn't go through the floor, there'd probably be a little bit less of a homeless problem. And as long as we keep printing money, throwing more money at that problem won't fix it. Or in any real solution becomes harder to, enact and sustain because we don't have a money that we can trust on anymore. We can't. You can't build on sand. You have to build on rock because otherwise you just get washed away. And I think that's you asked about hope earlier. What gives a lot of these people hope? Uh, Bitcoin. I mean, it's been it's been a pretty tough 5 years, for just about everybody. And the most optimistic people that I know are Bitcoiners. Some gold people, but they're more curmudgeon-y than anything. But the most optimistic people I know are Bitcoiners because we have a way out. We have something else that we can do. You don't just have to sit here and look at your computer screen and watch as just the negative news and the red stock tickers come flowing in and the bills start piling up and it makes you want to snap. But when you actually have a way out, like that gives you hope. And so I think that's one of the more powerful things that Bitcoin's done in the past couple of years is, offer Americans hope in the face of financial erosion, I guess we'll to put it lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, just the purchasing power and, it's not just packaging. It's, not things are just not getting smaller. It means that we're not able to buy as much with the same amount of dollars as we used to. And I saw a stat, and we'll put this in the episode, but I think it, was a really good stat by the Bureau of Labor is, looking at the US dollar, 2025 compared to 2020, $100 is now $76. Bitcoin was in 2020, $100 in Bitcoin, now it's 1,500. So there's, the performance right there. So,
Yeah.
It's really important to think about that as we're all trying to trust the systems that we've been asked to use. And it's really incumbent on the systems operators and the thought leaders and the leaders of our communities and our country to be thinking about our futures, thinking about our kids' futures. And there's a lot of people, I mean, the work that I do, in the nonprofit space is we're dealing with vulnerable individuals that 99% of their downward emotional spiral starts with financial anxiety. We've got to do something about that. So I really do appreciate, kind of the deeper dive into the emotional side of Bitcoin because commerce is about exchanging value between people. Without people trading and exchanging value with people, we don't have commerce. So
Right.
that's really the heart of business. Do you have any closing thoughts for us today, Wesley?
Find a local Bitcoin meetup and go to it.
When's the next one, and how do they find you guys?
Well, so our next one is Saturday. I don't know how often these come out, but our next one is Saturday the 13th. We do them every week. You can find out more at bitcoinbay.foundation.
Awesome. Well, I won't make it to see you guys on Saturday. I'm headed up to Georgia, but I hope you guys have a great meetup, and thanks for being on the show with me.
Of course, thanks for having me.